It's simple, really. Great stories with a good cup of tea. It's the Tea with Mike show. Today I'm excited to welcome to the show Christine Barger. Welcome to Tea with Mike, Christine.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. I'm excited, without spoiling too much of what we're going to be talking about. I'm really excited to learn a little bit more about ventriloquism. So let's just jump right in. And so nice and easy to begin. Where did you grow up?
I'm originally from Indiana in the Midwest, and I'm from a very small town. So basically, just a lot of cornfields and mint fields and a very small, like, school. And then I studied abroad in college in London, which was totally different than anything I'd ever experienced. Then I came back to kind of a middle-sized city in the Midwest to move out to Los Angeles. So I've had some drastic changes in where I've lived, from like a cornfield to an apartment complex in North Hollywood. So,
That's really interesting. So, yeah, talk to us a little bit more about what it was growing up. Did you know everybody in the town? Like, what were your favorite subjects in school? Like, also, how hard was it, like,
um,
to have kind of big dreams and aspirations beyond this very small town where there's probably only a handful of shops, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that type of environment?
oh yeah, no, it was very small. Like we had, well, I think we got a Burger King during my junior high school years. Like we just like it was so small. I think there's like one or two gas stations. Like actually the city that I was closest to, or the town I was closest to, wasn't technically a town because it didn't have a post office. So it was like that, like 15 miles to get to a gas station kind of place, which was
Yeah.
weird. Like, you're driving along. I mean, it was normal to me at the time, but like now that I live in a city, it's weird to think like I'd just be driving to school and get stuck behind a tractor or something, or like somebody's just driving a tractor to school, or, like it was just a different environment than where I live now. And I always knew that like I wanted to go and live in a city, or like do big things or something. Like I wasn't planning on staying in the town and, getting married and having kids and just settling down. Like that was never my thought. And so it is a little strange because everybody thought I was weird growing up because, I mean, I was already doing ventriloquism when I was 5. So, I mean, people would see me talking to puppets on stage and doing these like talent shows. And I was in the theater department, and I was a cheerleader, and I was the mascot, and I was in all the academic teams. Like I was constantly doing things. So everybody kind of knew me, but we all knew each other anyway. I mean, there was 100 people in my graduating class, I think.
Oh,
It
wow.
was just small. Everything was really small. Um, so yeah, I mean, like we knew the cops, you knew everybody. Which it's funny because I carried with me a lot of that like small town friendliness when I moved to LA. And the first role that I booked, I really attribute to the fact that I was just genuinely concerned for the woman at the casting office who was having a bad day and wanted to like make her day better, because that's just what you do. Like if you grew up in a city, I guess it's probably not quite the same, but in a small town, you know everybody, so you care about everybody and you want to make
Mm.
sure everybody's having a good day. So like I went up to this woman, was just like, have a good day and don't kill anybody. I hope your day gets better. And she remembered me because I was nice and brought me in to my first audition that I booked, and I got Taft-Hartley'd, which means I got into the union as an actor on my very first audition, which is like a huge deal for an actor. But it was really just because I had that small town energy of like just genuinely caring. And like I used to bring cookies to casting directors after they would bring me in for auditions as a thank you. Like I would bake them things, or I would like I made a scarf for some casting director who is very sweet, and I mean, I would consider her a friend now, but back then like I didn't really know her that well, but I knew she liked to knit, and she said she never knit herself anything. So I was like, well, I should knit you
Mm.
something so that you have something. It was just that sort of way I was raised is very different. And so it really stands out in a city like LA. So people I get still have kind of a small town, like I see people and I know them and I'm like, I ask the mailman his name, how you doing? And so it's not like I ever outgrew the small town. It's still in me, but I definitely wanted to have like walking distance to 12, fast food restaurants. Like I wanted to have that in my life. I didn't want to have to drive an hour to get to a Walmart anymore. Like I was over that.
And was there anyone before you that went on to do something significant? And did you get, I guess, inspiration from those people that graduated before you?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I can't think of anybody who like, no, not necessarily in my town. No, I mean my college, yeah, I went to the same college as David Letterman, so there was that, I guess. Not that I knew him. And Doug Jones, which a lot of people know, he was really well known for like Pan's Labyrinth. He does movie monsters, or the one where the girl falls in love with like the fish person. Oh, what is it? Something of Water? Shape of Water. He's the fish person in Shape of Water. He's from my college, but as far as my high school, I can't think of anybody like from my hometown that like
Yeah.
took the same path as me, I guess, that I followed. It was just kind of, I don't know, everything just fell into place. Like I wasn't even sure I was going to move to Los Angeles when I went to study abroad. I was like, I want to see what it's like to live in London. Maybe that's a theater city. Maybe I'll do theater. And then I was like, this is not going to be my thing. Like London's beautiful,
Yes.
but to live there as an American and try to do theater, I was like, that's probably not going to work. And so I was like, well, maybe New York, but New York has weather, like really, really has weather. And I'm like, I don't like weather. And then Chicago was close to my family, but I went ahead and studied abroad out here. And that's when I booked that role. I was still in college on my study abroad program when I booked my first role. So then I was like, well, I booked a role. I'm going to move to LA. Like,
so talk to us a little bit, because I know it's significant to you, of how you first got started in ventriloquism.
Yeah. So I started doing ventriloquism as a way to kind of cope with everything that was going on in my life as a kid. We were staying at the Ronald McDonald House when my brother was in the hospital. And there was this other kid at the Ronald McDonald House that had a gizmo doll, which is from the Gremlins movie. So I'm totally dating myself, but this little gizmo doll would whisper in their ear. And then they would say, well, Gizmo won't talk to you. He doesn't like you. And I'm just like a kid, like I'm little. And I'm just like, what do you mean he doesn't like me? That's not okay. And so I kind of figured out that Gizmo might not really be talking. Like, I was a pretty on it kid. I was like, I think Gizmo's not really talking. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make my teddy bear talk to everybody but you. Then you'll hear that my teddy bear is really talking and he's not going to talk to you. And so that's what I did. I made my teddy bear talk to everybody else except this one little kid because their Gizmo wouldn't talk to me. Just to make them understand what it felt like to not be liked by a stuffed animal, I guess. But that's really how I started doing it. And then my brother ended up passing away, and it was kind of my coping mechanism after that. And then my parents got me a puppet, and I started doing local festivals. And then kind of the point where I was like, this is what I'm going to do with my life was at a Shriners Grief Camp where I was performing for kids who'd lost loved ones. So they'd lost a mom or a dad or a brother, sister, and I had to. And so I was performing and explaining to them that like, this is something that I started doing because of that terrible thing that happened, but something good came out of it. And you can still move through this, and you can move on with your life, and your loved one would want that. And all these kids wrote me letters and like crayon and stuff, and just saying like how inspired they were. And I thought, wow, I can help people. I just have to be goofy and silly and make people laugh, and that's helpful. And I can make people smile, and that's what I want to do with my life. And so that's how I got on my path initially.
Also, do you remember your first puppet that your parents bought you?
Yeah, Freddie. He's a big red monster puppet. I think I just posted a TikTok a couple weeks ago with him in it because somebody had asked me. He wasn't here. He's just like a picture of me as a kid with him.
Right.
But yeah, he lives in my parents' house in their closet in the guest room, and I don't know why he doesn't live out here with me. I wouldn't use him anymore anyway, but like, I don't know, he just kind of lives there. I have like a puppet closet at my parents' house of puppets I no longer use. And then when I go visit them at Christmas and people are like on my TikTok wanting me to like make content, sometimes I'll bring out the old puppets from like my childhood and do ventriloquism. Because I don't like to carry puppets with me everywhere I
Okay.
go. I mean, I
Probably take up
kind
a lot
of,
of space.
yeah, I mean, I kind of do. Like, I have little ones that, like, Darwin, the dodo bird, kind of squishes down pretty small. So he can fit in the carry-on, and I can just take him, like, in a backpack if I'm going somewhere. So if I want to pull him out, I can make content. But it's not like I'm going to bring the whole crew with me everywhere I go. Like, Darlene doesn't fly well. I have to take her head off to get her head in my carry-on, and her body gets checked. So if anything happens, I only lose her body. I don't lose her head. It's really
Oh,
weird, like going through security
fine.
with a head in a bag.
The thing, like, if you're doing all these like traveling to performances and whatever, you have to go through security a lot. So how has, without going too specific, how has your experience been taking through like puppets through security?
I'm always surprised when I don't get stopped. Like if it goes through the metal detector and they don't say, "Excuse me, ma'am, come here," then I'm like, is this plane safe? Because you can't really tell what she is like in the bag, and there's all these wires and pulleys and stuff. And I'm like, it seems like you should want to see what this is. And usually they look and they're like, "Oh, okay," and they're just like, "Go on." I think security sees weirder stuff than a
Maybe.
dummy head in a bag, so like they're kind of not amused most of the time.
Interesting. And, but also, are you a frequent flyer out of certain airports?
No, I try not to
Oh,
ever
interesting.
fly if I can help it.
Oh, okay.
I once did a show in San Antonio and I drove. I was just like,
Oh,
I'll just drive to San Antonio because then I don't have to check dirt. Like, I hate having to like worry about my, because I could only bring Darlene's head with me and maybe Darwin. Like, I don't have room for everybody. So most everybody's checked. And so I'm always panic stricken in the flight that they're going to lose my luggage and I'm
mm.
going to get to the show and I'm going to have like one puppet and a head and that's it. I'm going to have to do like an hour with just one puppet and a head, which I could do, but I don't want to have to ever do. So I'm always just like, and then I'd have to replace them because once your luggage is lost, it's lost. I mean, I know they try to get it back to you, but you know. And like some of my puppets, I don't know where I would get them replaced at this point. I would have to come up with whole new characters. And it would just be really heartbreaking to lose them. So I hate flying. Like I absolutely hate it.
How you mentioned it briefly, but like, how hard is it to do maintenance on like puppets and stuff, right? Because the older they get, like, there must be limited places that can fix them, right? It's not like getting your oil changed at a car dealership, is it?
So Darlene's string broke to her mouth like right before the pandemic, I think. No, a couple months before the pandemic, because I got her fixed before all this started. But I had to call around. I called like 7 people, and everybody is like, no. And finally, I wrote the guy who made Darwin and Stunkles, and he suggested a guy who I happened to be Facebook friends with, and was just like, "Oh, I didn't realize that he would be able to do it." And he was an hour away, so I just drove over and I stood in his garage and I watched him do it. And then I was like, "Thank you." And then I brought her home. But if I didn't live close to somebody, I would have had to mail her head to a person I didn't know, ask him to fix her, have him ship her back. Like it's a big ordeal. With the sock puppets, not so much. Like the ones with the latex faces, they're made by Steve Axel, and he's not far from me, so I can just ship him, or I can just take him over to the shop and they'll repaint them. I've never actually done that. I've done a couple touch ups on Stunkles with like a marker when his black wears off too much, because I'm just like, yeah, whatever. He's a skunk. I can touch him up with a black marker, but Darwin, I can't really do that. Plus, his feathers are starting to come out. So I've actually thought about just buying a replacement because they're a standard puppet that's just made like you can order them out of a catalog. They're not my personal like creations. But if you're creating your own characters, then you have to like have someone make them again if you don't do it yourself. Like Jeff Dunham makes his own characters so he can just make a new one. But for me, I don't really make characters. So
I've
if I
seen
have it
Jeff Dunham
made,
perform. Yeah.
yeah, if I have it made, I have to go and like have someone make another one. So it's nice to have a couple made right up front and just keep them in storage in case something happens.
So how many puppets do you own, and like how expensive are they? Like ranging in price.
They're expensive. A dummy is a decent dummy is usually at least $1,000. Most of my puppets, well, not most of the ones that I use regularly are a couple $100. The ones that I've had for a while are probably less than that, like from a fair or a festival. Like you can get a puppet for like 80, $90 on the internet. That's just like a soft puppet. But if you want a good quality character, you're gonna pay for it. I mean, if you want a custom character, you're gonna probably pay close to $1,000 too for like a puppet.
Cool. And then how many puppets do you own?
Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know. 20 maybe? I don't know. I only work with Stunkles, Darwin, Grandpa. I have a wooden figure that came in that is similar to Grandpa. I kind of switch between the two with a similar personality and voice. Billy Yonkers, and Billy has a double. So if you watch some of my old videos, you'll see Billy had red hair. Then he bleached it blonde out of the blue one day because they didn't have the same hair color, but they were gifts from my parents. And mom got me one and my dad got me the other. And so like I just used them as the same character over the years. And then Darlene. So like 6, 7 that I use kind of regularly, and the rest are just like, I mean, I've got little lamb chops puppets and things that are copyrighted that I can't really use but might show up on my TikTok once in a while. But just things that people have gifted to me. I mean, random people from the internet will call me and be like, I have a dummy. Would you like it?
Oh,
I'm
really?
just like, why? Are you punking me? You know, or something? They're like, no, my grandma, passed it down to me and I don't want it. And I don't know what to do with it. And I found you on the internet. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I get random characters.
That's a cool story in itself. Yeah, all right. So in your YouTube video teaching Hannah Fossier how to do ventriloquism, you say that you need to choose a personality for your puppet and a voice. So what personality did you give Freddie? Do you think it reflected your own personality at that time in any way?
Oh, I mean, I guess. Freddie's personality isn't super strong because he was my very first character. I still was figuring out how to, create characters back then. I mean, I was a kid. So he was pretty similar to me. He liked to sing, and we mostly just sang songs together. We didn't have a lot of conversation or banter as much as like I do with, say, Darlene or Stunkle, somebody that I've had as an adult where I've really developed their personalities. But yeah, I mean, I guess he was kind of just similar to me back then, and then he would just sing. And so we would like switch off and on and sing a lot. And then I had a monkey named Henry, and he had a little bit more of an ornery personality, and he was one of the first puppets I had. And I remember he and I did a show once for a nursing home. I don't know if elderly care center, and they brought everybody into like this room, and I sat puppets. Like every puppet I had was like in different spots around the room, and we went all around the room with these different residents, and we would sing different songs from like my Sunday school class. And I was doing a show called Looking for the Lord, and my monkey and I were like looking for the Lord. And I remember he was so ornery. And then I would meet all these different puppets along the way, and they would sing like Father Abraham had many sons or whatever. And it was like one of my first real like established shows that I created. And every puppet kind of had its own personality, but it was like based on a Bible character. So it was easy for me to come up with because I was like, this is what I think that Bible character was like if they were a frog, or if they were a this or whatever I had, a monster. So I mean, I tried, but definitely as an adult, it was easier to come up with characters and like understand how comedy works. And I've educated in theater, so like I have a theater degree. Like I understand building characters and stuff a lot more now than I would have when I was, 5 or 7.
Yeah, so it sounds like all of the stuff that you did before you dive deep into ventriloquism like helps you in the creative process, because really it's very creative. It's you typically can't Google how to create a ventriloquist show like
Well, and we didn't have internet when I was growing up, so it wasn't like I could just look up how to do it or find other ventriloquists. I didn't know that there were other ventriloquists in the world when I
Oh,
started doing
okay.
it. I'd never seen it. I didn't know it was a skill. I just want to make my teddy bear talk. So once I
Yeah.
found out that it was a thing, I saw a local ventriloquist perform at my school. And I was just like, it was Beth Sutton Cummins. And I was just like, Beth, I can do that too. Like, I was like, this is so cool. There's another person who does this. And then, I started seeing people on TV and Jeff Dunham. And then I went to a convention for ventriloquists where I met a bunch of ventriloquists, like thousands of us all in one room. And that was cool. But before
Oh,
that, I really didn't know. Yeah, there's a convention for ventriloquists. There's a convention for
I
everything.
because I was about to ask you, do you know roughly how many like ventriloquists there are in the world? Because like the like I haven't seen no I know like 3, right? But that's
I know several, but I don't know how many there are in the world. I know there's a couple thousand that show up to the convention, which is probably most of us. Because I
wow.
feel like, people who are working professionally, at least, most of us have at least gone once, I think, to one of the many conventions. Because there's a Christian puppeteering convention that I went to when I was young, and then there was the Vent Haven convention, which is kind of the main one. I think there's one in Vegas. We were supposed to do a meetup, but it got postponed this past year. But we were supposed to do a meetup in, I think, Arizona for ventriloquists, and there was going to be a bunch of us that showed up there too. So,
Wow.
there's you run into people that have similar interests as you, especially with the internet. Like it's so much easier to find each other. So I'm in Facebook groups just for ventriloquists, and
That's
I've had the
cool.
privilege of meeting really like iconic people like Willie Tyler and Lester, and so it's pretty cool. And so the woman who did lamb chops, her daughter Mallory now does lamb chops. So I've got some, big friends Mallory, and like it's pretty cool.
It's just crazy, like obviously I wasn't there, but like the how you must feel inside that like this is virtually all of the ventriloquists in one room, like for the entire globe. That's just like crazy to like think about.
It is. It's pretty cool though, because you're just meeting people who barely even speak English that are in like Kentucky with you, or like talking about puppets. Like it's pretty fun.
That's cool. So what do you do at this like event conference? Are the speakers, are the mini performances, like how does it run? Or when you went, at least, how did the event run?
There's speakers, and there's really well-known ventriloquists. They'll try to get to show up, like Darcy Lynn or Terry Fader or Jeff Dunham. There's also ventriloquists that are well known within the community, but aren't necessarily widely known by the public, that are just kind of iconic as well. They do workshops, they do performances, they have like an impromptu open mic type performances. There's a dealer's room, so there's like a whole room where you could just go and buy stuff. So you could spend a lot of money at a ventriloquist convention. And then we all stay at the hotel pretty much. And there's another one that happens, CAX, which is like a magic and puppetry convention, and that happens out in LA. And they actually go and take a tour of Steve Axel's shop, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's cool. So is Steve Axel? Talk to me. Who is Steve Axel? Because I
He
don't actually know.
he's a puppet maker in Southern California, and he's one of the top puppet makers. If you've seen a lot of my stuff, you've definitely seen his
Okay,
characters. So the dodo bird I use, the skunk I use, and the magic marker board that comes to life is all from his company and his creations. But he makes
that's so
just so
cool.
many different types of characters, and he does a lot of Darcy stuff. And Terry Fader, I think, has a couple of his characters. You can kind of recognize them when you see them, because they're latex faces with like fur, feathers, or whatever kind of body. generally. So they're pretty
So
like,
cool.
you can go, oh, that's definitely a Steve Axel character, Axel Expressions character.
Nice. So what's the most challenging thing about learning ventriloquism?
Um, everybody's different. I didn't really know I was learning to do it, so it wasn't like I had a challenge of going, yeah, I've got to learn how to do this skill. Like I just did it and then found out later what it was. So when I learned it, it wasn't like I was struggling with the letter P or anything. I just kind of did it. So I was a kid. But for the students that I've taught, there's different things that people will struggle with. Some people will struggle with the letters and the hard letters. Some people really struggle with the personality and the voice and making their puppet not themselves, or making their puppet not something that is already a character. Like they'll want to use like a slappy puppet or something, and have that personality that they've seen established. And it's like, well, you have to create your own personality for it. Don't copy someone else's. But oddly, the thing that seems to throw most people when they first start is just simply moving their hands or their whatever the trigger mechanism at the right time. And that always blows my mind when that's the thing that's like the hardest. Like their lip control will be great. They'll be really good at personality or whatever. But like for some reason, moving their hands with every syllable is difficult. And I'm like, you're doing it backwards. Like that'll happen all the time. And they'll be like closing the mouth on the sound instead of opening it. And I'm just like, I don't know how to fix that. Like just do it the right way. Like that's a really hard thing to teach someone. Like it's just a practice.
Now you see, here's something funny. I could never be a ventriloquist and I know this for a fact, because like when I go to the gym and I'm doing my exercises, I'll like breathe in the wrong direction for like inhale and like exhale. So definitely know I could never do ventriloquism.
So that would be your biggest challenge. So everybody's
Yeah.
going to be a little bit different, but yeah, that's funny. I would be concerned if you were breathing incorrectly while you work out. I feel like you might just pass out.
But it's not terrible, but it's like I have to like physically think about, okay, so inhale, exhale. The T fact for today's episode is kind of cool, and to my knowledge, it's a Guinness World Record too. So this is to do with the largest tea party, that holds the Guinness World Record, and apparently it was called Dane Bhaskar. And this event was in the city of Indore in India, and it set the record for the largest number of attendees at a tea party, and the amount of people in attendance was 32,681 people, and it was held in a cricket stadium, which obviously India is very famous for. And the event apparently gained a lot of media coverage. And the purpose of the event was designed to raise funds to improve Indore's civic infrastructure.
Wow. That's so many people at a tea party.
I can't even imagine it. So I have like questions about the layout. Was it just people sitting in the stands talking to the person on the left, on the right? Like, do you just move around and interact with random people, or so many more questions. Maybe I'll have to see if I can find out more about it. Right.
Right.
That's a lot of people at a tea party. Yeah, I heard that. I don't even know how many people that is. I can't even imagine that many. That's a big number.
Yes, this is Stunkles.
Hello, Mike. Am
Hey,
I on
Stunkles.
tea with Mike?
Yes, you're on tea with Mike.
Oh, this is fun. That was a neat tea fact.
Yes, it was.
Well, thank you.
You just go to stare at him.
I'm waiting to see what happens next.
Well, first off, I like that you have blue eyes. I also have blue eyes.
Oh, we have matching eyes.
Miss Me, we have great personality.
Oh, I think so. I agree.
Me too. I'm just mind blown. You know, I don't have any words. You're that cool.
Whoa, he stopped talking. Isn't this a podcast? You're supposed to talk on the podcast, right?
Oh, but this is also conversational. So, you know, there's pauses in a conversation to appreciate great talent and entertainment.
Oh, who's doing the talent?
I think he just thinks that you're adorable. That's your talent.
I am adorable. Thank you.
Oh, so good.
You want to go?
Okay, I'm gonna go. It was so nice to meet you.
Bye. Lovely to meet you.
There you go.
Oh, so good. You caught me off guard there because I wasn't expecting that. So that was cool. Very cool.
He was just interested in the tea facts. I mean, anytime there's a big group of people together, Snuggles gets excited.
I love it. That's my favorite thing about entertainment also, is like how it brings like so many people together. And that's like, I hope people have a new sense of appreciation, like post-pandemic, for like the craft of the live entertainment industry and all these millions of people that put in hours and dedication to making something happen. And next time they go to an event, I hope people actually enjoy the event and not just like this on their phone.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been a weird time for entertainers because everybody's been trying to transition to social media or to live events through Zoom, and it's just not the same. Like,
No, it really
it's
isn't.
really not the same to perform like comedy or whatever for a screen. And I was blessed that I'd been doing live shows on TikTok or Musically back in the day where I was used to performing to a screen with no sort of response except the chat. So I know how to stream. But for people who never had done it before and were just like now trying to find a way to make an income based on what they'd been doing with their whole life, to do comedy to a screen with no laughter is just an awful feeling when you start. And so it's really weird, and I'm sure there were a lot of people who were just like, wow, this is not at all what I want to do. Like, I want to be back in a theater with people. And I've seen people do full on plays just on Zoom, and I'm just like, this is not the same experience at all.
No, for sure. And like for some people, it's like anything. Some people it's easy to adapt, and then others it's like crazy, you know. So I feel like maybe I'm wrong, but like the longer that you've done something or the longer you've been in the industry, from specifically on the performance side, the harder it is probably to adapt.
I think it is and it isn't. It's definitely, you get accustomed to doing things a certain way. So there's that. Especially just as you get older in general, I think you get accustomed to things being a way and you want to keep it that way. Kids seem to adapt a lot quicker. But I think as your experience, then you kind of know what you're doing. So then you're still able to go, well, this is where the laugh pause is, or this joke will work because I've been doing it for 20 years or whatever, like what works and what doesn't, where a newer entertainer is just kind of blindly flying there going, I don't know, I'm just trying things.
So true. So talk to us a little bit about the creative process of creating the actual physical shows themselves, like the kind of the process behind it.
So I used to write all my material, and it would just be kind of horrible. Like, I hate writing. It's not a thing I enjoy at all. Like, I don't want to sit down with a pad of paper and just write stuff. It's just not fun. But I used to do that. I used to write everything out. It was very stand up, like it was set up, punch, then go try it, see what works. Over the years, I realized that just wasn't a style that I enjoyed. And I was like, why am I doing something I don't like to get to the point where it's the fun part? Can I find a way to do just the fun part all the time? And so I created what's called Ventriloquism. So I do short form improv comedy with my puppets for the majority of my show. So if I do an hour show, like 45 minutes of that is improvised.
Wow.
It's structured improv. It's just like if you were to go to a short form improv show where they're like, okay, we have this game figured out, we know what we're gonna do, but we need suggestions from you to make the jokes.
Yeah, I love improvisation. Like my background's in theater, worked professionally in it for a little bit, and also performed as an actor a long time ago and stuff. and I've been to an improv show, and like I just love how they can create the story based on the people in the room, and I could literally sit for like 24 hours at a time, depending falling asleep watching that type of stuff, because it's amazing how it comes together, right?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's much more challenging when you're the only person on stage doing the improv with another version of yourself on your hand being your partner. It's nice because I can definitely know that my setups are going to be followed with the idea that I had in mind. Most of the time. Sometimes my puppet will literally say something that like I will think of, and I'm like, did I just say that? What happened? Oh, this was the path that I thought I was going down, and then I do have to like fix it. But the audience comes on stage with me, and so I will actually have like an audience member doing my sound effects. So then we have something to play off of, or I'll bring 8 people up and have them pose in different positions that I don't know what they're going to do, and we'll be like, this is our holiday picture, this is our vacation picture, and there is a mermaid or whatever, and we'll like go through all of the stuff.
Cool.
So it's really fun because I get to get the audience on stage in like a huge quantity of people get to come up on my show. I think like 30 is the most they've brought up in a show. And so
that's cool.
That means that 30 people from the audience have a memory of something that they participated in, as opposed to everybody sitting out there watching and maybe have one volunteer. Like, you know, in a magic show, maybe you get 7 volunteers or something throughout the show. So 7 people have an experience, but everyone else is just kind of watching. So I try to get as many people involved as possible.
Well, you kind of sort of alluded to that you improvise, but like, where do you get some of the like base ideas from, right? Because you taught even though it's improv, there's still quite a bit of structure, right?
There's a lot of structure, and that comes from my many years of doing improv as an improviser professionally, or I used to teach improv classes for years out of a theater. And so I've so many games under my belt. I mean, I went to Groundlings and IO West, and like these are major improv schools. And so I've been taught by some of the best. And so I have like so many games that I know that I literally will sit there and be like, well, this game will take me with my puppet, knowing, like, it's always Billy Yonkers, he's my improv partner, but Billy and I, the 2 of us, will be able to do like this many jokes on, you know, this particular game. It'll take about 4 minutes, and then this game will take 7 minutes, and I schedule out my show based on how long the games will take and what type of audience I have. Because if it's children, I do different types of comedy than if it's a corporate event. And it takes different amounts of time to get 10 adults on stage than it does 10 7-year-olds. So in explaining takes a different amount of time to kids than it does to adults. So I have to also I have to explain to my audience members what they're about to do in a way that's entertaining for everyone, but quick enough to like get to the point, but also that they understand what's happening. And that goes into the schedule too.
That's how to do, right? Like everything from making sure like your character and you are like in sync, to also have been a mum if it's in the kitchen. Oh, come on, Frederick, up you get, like, to like crying, to like interruptions, to like a corporate event and people standing around in like suits that are maybe like only like half listening because they're talking to your blogs, right? So it takes a lot of skill, I guess, to like adapt
every show is very different. And you learn over the years certain things. Like I had to learn that in my contract, it says you cannot be serving food while I'm performing. Because when you are taking orders and serving food to corporate parties, they are not listening. They can be eating, that's fine, but they can't be dealing with the servers. If everyone is getting their order taken, no one cares about the entertainment, they care about the food. I don't care how good you are. They're just like, yes, I'm going to order my food now and get my drink. And can we get some wine at the table?
I've been waiting like 20 minutes for this, you know?
Right. And I'm just like, I cannot compete with servers getting them food when they're hungry. So like, there's little things that are in my contract now. Like everybody needs to be facing the stage. Please don't have half the audience's back to me while they're eating and expect me to be able to communicate with them. They're not looking at me. And whoever has their back to the stage isn't really watching. And so there's things that you learn, just like from experience. I've learned that when their backs to me, they're not watching me because they're eating, and they're ignoring me because they can't see, and they don't want to do this while they eat.
Nice. That's, you almost read my mind, because that's where I was going to go next with this. So give us one specific example of a time where the show did not go as expected for any reason.
So I did a show that the corporate like CEO or whoever thought it would be really cool to have a ventriloquist because they thought that was like a cool thing. And I was like, that's so awesome. I'm so excited to be there. And I get there and no one's laughing. And I was like, oh no, this isn't going well. Like, what's wrong? Like, this material always works, you know? And so, because you use your like good, solid material that always works at corporate events because you don't want to fail. You don't try new material at corporate events. You try new material in the comedy club. Like, if you fail at the comedy club, whatever. But if you fail at a corporate event, that's bad because they're paying you a lot of money to be there. So you do your like solid material, and I'm doing it, and I was like, what is going on? So I'm like, can I get some people on stage for the improv? Like, I was like, we'll just skip over to this real quick. And I got people on stage, and I was explaining to them what to do, and then they weren't doing it. But they were like smiling and nodding, and they weren't doing it. And it finally hit me. They didn't know what I was saying because almost nobody in the audience spoke English.
Oh.
The people at the top spoke English at like the corporate office or whatever, but most of the employees spoke Spanish. And this is like Southern California. And so they were entertained enough as they could be for not understanding anything I said. And so it just didn't go well. Like, it was like, okay, I learned the lesson. Like, I asked now, does your audience speak English? You do know that I am only English speaking, correct, when you book me.
Good.
Yeah. I also had once someone tried to book me, and then they wanted a man. So they asked me if I could send the man to the show instead of me. And I was like, you're trying to book me and you want me to send a man? What? And they were like, well, we can't have a woman perform. We have to have a man perform because of a religious reason. I wasn't allowed in the building because I wasn't male. And I was like, well, you can't hire me then. You have to hire somebody else because I don't have a man to send you. Like, I can't just change into a man tomorrow or whatever. Like, you gotta hire somebody different. You can't hire me. But that was a super awkward conversation to have with somebody.
Wow, those are good stories within themselves. Do you have a favorite puppet?
I don't have a favorite puppet because that's like choosing a favorite child, and I can't do that. But I often use Stunkles, the one that you met. I often use him because he's small and I like his voice. It doesn't hurt my throat. Where as I've aged, some of the characters that I started doing when I was younger, their voices are harder now for me. And they'll make me cough a lot, like Grandpa. If I do him for extended periods of time, I'll just start having a coughing fit because his voice I cannot warm my throat up enough to do that voice for very long. But Stunkles is super easy, and he's small and he's easy to carry everywhere. So it's not like I have to take a case. Like Darlene's in this huge case. She's the size of a 3-year-old, but he's so tiny. And so he can just go in a backpack. So he kind of is my go-to now that a lot of people see me use. So they're like, is that your favorite? I'm like, he's the easiest to use and I like his personality, but favorite is a hard word.
A very well-structured answer based off years of experience. Yeah. Awesome. So, like, this is a little bit more broad. So, like, what is it that you love so much about, like, I guess let's just keep it nice and broad, about the entertainment industry, and what's kept you in this industry for like so long, like going through all of the highs and the lows, including the recent pandemics?
Well, I like inspiring people and making people laugh. I know that people get joy out of what I do, and that makes me feel really fulfilled. I had a kid on TikTok the other day that made a TikTok for me or about me because I had commented on something that they had done and followed them. Maybe I answered their question. I don't remember exactly what happened, but whatever it was, I had communicated with them and connected with them. And they made this video where they were just like, you've inspired me that I could do anything, I could be anything. And I was just like, okay, this is why I do it. And when you see that kind of response from your audience, or like I do this charity event thing where I go to schools and I perform plays that are written by fourth graders. And so the kids, there's like 10 actors come, we're all working actors, we show up and the kids cast us in their plays and we don't get to read them first, we just perform them for the whole school. It's very stressful and fun, but it's just like, I don't want to mess this up. This fourth grader just spent months writing this and now I've got one shot at not messing it up in front of everybody, and I hadn't read it yet. So we have fun doing it. But I'll go to those and sometimes I'll have kids that will recognize me from whatever, whether it's TV or TikTok or whatever, and they'll see me and they'll get so like starstruck they can't even talk, and they'll just want to meet me and ask, can I get a hug or something. And just that joy and that excitement, that it's like, wow, what I do is impactful to people. And so that's why I keep doing it.
That's awesome. So like, how easy was it for you to create like content digitally? So I guess talking kind of YouTube and TikTok here, and then how does performing on these types of mediums differ from performing on stage or in film or physically in person?
Ooh, they're all different ways of performing. And even between like TikTok and YouTube are fairly different ways of performing, because it's long form content versus short form content. And I'm much better, I think, at short form. I like long form and I do it, but I mean, short form is much more like, for comedy, it's very easy to do. I wasn't actually planning on being a social media person. It just kind of happened to me, which was cool. I was getting ready to open an escape room actually years ago. I was in the process of buying like a truck or something, like whatever they're called, like a big van thing, to put it like a mobile unit. And I was like days away from purchasing the mobile unit to start building, and I'd already bought some props. Like I was ready to go, and I get this random message from LiveMe saying, "We'd like you to be a live streamer on our platform." And I was like, I don't even know what that means. Like, what is live stream? What? So like I went ahead and had a meeting with them. I like went to the office, I met them. They told me all about live streaming, and they were like, "We think you'd be great at this, and we want to bring you on our platform." And I was like, well, I'll try it. And in my head, I was like, I'll just do this for a couple weeks, get the hang of it, and then I'll open the escape room. It'll be fine. Like, just do that. Because it can't take that long to live stream. No, I was doing like 8-hour days live streaming, like 5-6 days a week. And I was just exhausted all the time, because doing that much content is a lot. Like just talking to someone for that long in a day is a lot. And I was just like, I ended up putting off the escape room and never actually getting around to building it, because I got then pulled into Musical.ly and then Vigo and all of these different platforms. And then I started doing more YouTube content more consistently. Then there was a point where I was doing daily vlogs, which I will never do again. Unless I have an editing team behind me, I am not doing daily vlogs. That's the worst. So much work. But I started going to VidCon, and I just really enjoyed it. And then it gave me that kind of energy I needed to get back into getting an agent and everything for my acting career, because I had gotten also kind of pulled away from doing my acting. And in that time, my team had changed. And so I was just like, they didn't really get who I was. So I needed to find a new team to get me auditions. So it's all kind of come full circle and getting me back. But being on stage is totally different, because it's all you. And if you mess it up, then it's done. Like, it's messed up. You can't fix it. It's live. I love that sort of energy, but it's definitely a different sort of stress. Where on TV and movies, like if you mess up, you just do it again. And it's never like, even if it's your fault, it's rarely your fault. Like they'll like try to make it not the actor's fault. They just want to like make you feel good. They're people around there just to try to make you feel good. It's very strange. And
there was a wasp that flew past you as you spoke. Sorry about the wasp.
Oh. And then, when you make your own content, it's all on you. And it's a lot freer, but also a lot harder because you don't have a team writing for you. So yeah, I mean, they're all different things.
Which do you like? Which do you like the best?
I like being on set, and having someone give me my words and let me just play as their character. Just because it takes the pressure of writing off of me. Because like I said, I hate writing. I really hate writing. I hate writing so much. Like I can't emphasize that enough. I hate writing. So I love being able to have someone write for me. When I do my own content, it just kind of organically comes. So that's great. But if I get stuck and I don't have an idea and I feel like I have to sit down and write an idea, then I'm like, I have to write. So there's that. But when you go to set, there's food, everybody's like happy, or if they're not, they pretend to be happy around the actors because they don't want to make the actors' day bad. Like, they're very nice people, and everyone works so hard. There's just so many people working on the project. The pressure's pretty high because the budgets are usually like a thing, but it's just so much more fun to have someone do your makeup and just kind of do your hair. And like, if a hair is out of place, they'll fix it for you. It's not like you'll go back, look later at the editing and go, oh man, why is there like a horn coming out of my head? I have to reshoot this. Like, they're not going to let that happen. Like, it's great.
That's awesome. So what's going on in the present day? Like, what are you working on that you can like talk about?
Well, it just aired. My episode of Superstore aired, so that's really fun. I shot that during the pandemic, which is pretty stressful, but it was really great to be able to be a part of a show that is so iconic, and the last season, and just be a part of those last, like, it was, I think, the third to last episode, and just get to meet and work with incredible actors like Mark. It was great. So you can see that on Hulu, and I think you can find it on their app as well. But hopefully it'll re-air in syndication. That would be great, because when that happens, actors get paid again. So we like that. We like when things re-air. I'm doing TikTok still pretty much regularly, so you can find me on TikTok. My YouTube, I post every Friday on my main channel, which is Christine Barger. I also post escape room reviews and haunted attraction walkthroughs on my like secondary channel, The Haunt Girl, which is fun if you like that sort of thing. I'm a big escape room enthusiast. Yeah, I mean, I'm on Instagram, on all the places, but the most exciting, like, recent big thing was the Superstore. I just aired, so that was really fun.
That's awesome, and that obviously put all your links below this video. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. I had a lot of fun with you and your fellow partner and puppet.
Thank you so much for having me.
No worries. All right, guys. This was another episode of the Tea with Mike show with Christina. Thanks for watching. Definitely leave us a comment, or in however you may be consuming this piece of content. See, it goes down on so many platforms that I can't keep count on. And Christine, stay safe out there, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
It's the Tea with Mike show.